Welcome everybody to another session of Creating Wealth Through Property. Today I have arguably Australia's leading property lawyer on the line, and we are going to get amazing value from this. So please let me welcome Tony Cordato from Sydney, and come on board, Tony.
Thanks, Craig. Great to join you for a quiet little chat today.
It is. Now, my people are very enthusiastic about property, how to get into property, how to create some value and get some money out of the property industry. So, do you have any great ideas for them?
Well, I reckon my whole attitude is you buy property and make it sweat. It's got to work, not work normally, work hard for you. It has to sweat. So to do that, you actually have to put some input into the property to really get it moving. And the input, many kinds of input. The first one is you're really careful when you buy the property to make sure that there's something in it that you can get potential gain, capital gain, or potentially better rent. And then when you own a property, you've just got to make it sweat, not just give you a normal rent, give you a great rent. And then at the end, if the time's come to sell, you want the best price. You've got to present it to get the best price. So that's how I make properties not only work for me, but sweat for me.
Haven't heard that expression sweat for you before. Not with a property. Normally it's us going in and doing all the sweating about renovating and being concerned about the price and the banks, etc. So how do you make a property sweat for you?
Well, you can't buy new off the shelf and hope for a great result. People buy new off the shelf hoping for, well, there's no repairs for a couple of years. And yeah, often that's right, but often that's wrong. If they're buying a home unit, the home unit may be fine, but the whole building may have all these building defects. And so suddenly you're into the renovation business, even though you're buying a new building. So don't buy new, a bit like buying a new car. Drive the car out of the showroom, and for the next 5 years, you just watch it go down in value. You can do all the polishing, all the maintenance, everything you like just goes down in value. Same with a new property. All it does is goes down in value relative to the new properties that are being built up the road. Have you ever noticed why a 5-year-old property may be worth $100,000 less than a new equivalent two-bedroom property up the road?
I think I've had that property, Tony.
What's that?
I think I've had that property myself.
Yeah, it's just what happens. And I've bought new. I'm not perfect. We've bought new, and I've watched it, and I think, well, what is that a good trade-off for a new property to watch it go down in value but have no repairs? Or are you better off buying something that's had a bit of decline in value and has got potential, if you spend some money wisely, to increase value, capital value or rental value?
Okay, so what sort of renovations would you make to a property? Electrical, plumbing?
There's a great word for it, Craig. It's called cosmetic. Give it some lipstick. Cosmetic renovations, unless of course unless it's obvious you need to do a little bit more. Now, so as actually a definition of cosmetic renovations, which you find from the strata laws, and they are things like interior paintings, filling minor holes. So painting, maybe polishing floorboards / carpet, maybe finishing off something that hasn't been finished off properly, and then just anything that's broken light switches, broken power points, broken fry screen doors, and just basically tidying up the exterior. Cosmetic.
And so that wouldn't include plumbing or electricity then at all?
No.
Because they're big ticket items.
No, you don't. You steer away from that. I mean, electricity is going to still come into the house regardless of the age of the power point. Only if it's broken does it need replacing.
Okay. So what sort of permits do you need? Is that a big thing? Do you need permits for these simply cosmetic ones, or is it just the major ones?
Yeah, just... Can you rephrase that?
Do you need permits for the cosmetic where you're doing some gardening type work, putting up a pergola, or is it only the major bodies of work where you're pulling down walls and adding on extra stories?
Yeah, that's a really good... Yeah, I thought you were kind of leading into, do you need a council permit for any of that? That's where you're going. And again, it's really interesting. When I was researching for our talk, I had a look at what things you require council permits for. What you don't need permits, you do not need permits for balconies, decks, patios, pergolas, terraces, verandas, carports, concrete driveways, solar energy systems, privacy screens, rainwater tanks or shade structures. So all that kind of stuff does not require council approval unless, of course, you're in a heritage house.
Right. And what if you make a mistake with these and you do actually do something where it does need council approval and you haven't got it? You've just been, oh yes, that'll be good, I'll go and do this, I'll knock down this wall, or I'll put up a glass wall somewhere. How do you get yourself into trouble, and how do you get to stay out of trouble?
Just depends how major it is. Yeah, if you're knocking out walls, that's by definition structural. If you're adding another room, internal room, that's by definition structural. If you happen to do it without council approval, you've got a choice. When you sell it, you've got to disclose it's been done without council approval and hope that nobody worries or nobody devalues the house too much. Or you can fill out a simple application form, submit it to council, and they can kind of retrospectively approve it.
Okay. Oh, that's good to know, because I have to admit I've been concerned on occasions, if you do this, are you ever going to be able to sell the house because it didn't have a permit?
Yeah, you're right. And if there's any doubt, I mean, you get the thing approved by council, and council say you've already done some of the work, and you say, I know, but I just needed to finish it off. Your approval to finish it off, and they're okay about it.
Okay. Is there any great ways of getting into a property? I know on one occasion I actually bought a place and we gained access to it in advance before settlement. Is that a recommended process?
Look, if the property's empty, it's of no value to the seller. It's an invitation to ask for early access, as far as I'm concerned. If people are still living, you can't. Living in it, you can't. But if it's empty, you ask for early access. Most sellers will agree to it, provided you give them a list of things you're wanting to do. They'll always agree to painting. They'll always agree to fixing anything that's broken. They'll usually agree to floorboards being sanded and painted or carpeted. More rarely will they agree to doing anything in a bathroom or kitchen. So you just ask for what is capable of being asked for, and that should buy you, know, anywhere between 30 days and 60 days, we're not paying a mortgage, and you're fixing up the place.
Wow. So that's a real saving then in time and, as you said, mortgage payments. So people could save themselves 8, 10 grand by just gaining access to it in advance and put that money actually straight into the property to increase its value for a quick turnaround of the property to flip it over.
Actually, that's a very good way of looking at it, Craig. So if you work out how much money you're going to save by early access, assume you save $5,000. Then you have $5,000 to spend on renovations, and that's what you do.
Nice.
You spend that money and you improve the value for capital gain or for renting. And then if you finish early, I used to like always to finish in about a 4-week time frame. You then get permission from the seller to rent it out. So the agent will find you a tenant, hopefully within 2 or 3 weeks, and the tenant moves in either the day it settles or before it settles. So not only have you saved the interest and used it to pay for the renovation, but you have the rental starting from the day you pay for the house.
Would you need to get some sort of rental, some sort of certificate of occupancy for that at all, or it would on a used property?
They'll ask for a license fee for a rent for early occupation if you move in. But if you're simply gaining access, sometimes you have to pick up the key from the agent in the morning and return it in the afternoon. Generally, they won't ask for any money because you're not living there.
Wow, that is such a great idea to do. That could really contribute enormously to your renovation costs. If you only budget, say, 15 to 20 grand to renovate a property, and you're saving up to 5 grand by gaining access early, that's a huge saving.
Yeah, it is. It just means that you don't buy and then spend the 4 weeks or 6 weeks or 8 weeks renovating. You get the 4 to 6 to 8 weeks free.
Wow. Truly does go with the saying, you make your money when you buy.
Yeah. Well, you make your money by negotiating good terms. Yes, you negotiate a good price, but you make money by negotiating good terms. And certainly early access and / or delayed settlement, the two major terms you can negotiate when you buy a property. I mean, I'll tell you a quick story. I was in the syndicate buying an industrial property with offices and so on. And there was a business going to move in, but it would take 6 months for it to be renovated before the business would move in and start paying rent. So we actually negotiated 12-month delayed completion for this industrial property and early access. During that time, they said, look, if you want early access, you won't pay any rent, but we do want you to pay the council rates, the water rates, land tax, and the insurance. And we said, yeah, that's a fair trade. We'll pay that and no rent. Anyway, so it took 3 months to get the council approvals. It took another 6 months to get the work done. So we really needed that 12 months before the property was ready for the tenant to move into. But it worked. The property was ready for the tenant to move into before the end of 12 months. The bank valued the property at 20% above purchase price because we cleaned it up. We got that 20% back, of course. That far exceeded the cost of renovation. So we got what we wanted. The seller got what they wanted, which is the property sold, and the tenant got to move in the day we settled.
Wow. That certainly goes with my philosophy of a win-win-win solution. I've never really been a big favour of the win-win solution. I always believe there's three parties to any deal. So yes, that covers it pretty well.
Yeah, I mean, you can't do that with residential. It's very hard negotiating more than 90 days. Delayed settlement residential. I mean, I'm talking of metropolitan areas. In the country, you can negotiate more.
Well, farmers have been doing it for a very long time, haven't they?
Yeah, well, because the poor farmers, the banks abandon the poor farmers. They won't lend any money to them at all, or if they do, they're going to lend 60% of the price. So they've got to find some way of making it work to actually get their property sold.
I think that a lot of people have been concerned about trying to negotiate terms because they see, oh yes, everybody does an auction, so they just go to auctions and they don't think, oh, I can actually go and approach them privately and buy a property and work out the best arrangements, especially if a property is derelict at the moment. Most often the owner of the property will want to sell it just to get rid of it and not have to worry about it any longer.
Yeah, not just derelict properties. During a hot auction market, vendors love the idea that they put it to auction and get their money in 4 weeks, 6 weeks, 8 weeks, 10 weeks, whatever's negotiated. But when the auction market cools down, they still want the auction price, but no one's prepared to pay it anymore.
Okay.
That's the time to come in with your terms and say, look, we're interested in, if you give us terms, we're happy to pay this price for it. And they're always lured by a little bit more money. It's not a lot of money. Maybe another $5,000. But another $5,000 can mean a lot to a vendor, a seller, if they don't have much of a mortgage. So just a little bit more money will buy you a lot of time, a lot of terms.
No, that sounds like a couple of great strategies there. So I think we could talk for a very long time, Tony, on how to do this. There's so much more. I know that you've been heavily invested in the vendor finance arena as well. So I'd love to chat with you on that in another session. But at this stage, I'd like to thank you very much for this. And I know that everyone will have got a great deal of value out of your contributions today. And what we'll do is we'll put a thing on the end of this video, making sure that everybody has your details and is able to contact you. Now, you're in Sydney. Do you operate outside of Sydney or just inside?
I cover the state, and I will do purchasing in Queensland and Victoria. But New South Wales, I'll cover everything, and purchasing in those two states.
Okay, well, I've always had this belief, I got it off my grandfather, why have a dog and bark yourself? You're always better to have the best dog in town. So,
well, I don't know what kind of dog, but anyway, maybe a big Labrador.
Labrador, right. Well, thank you very much, Tony, and wish you the best. And thank you again for everything that you've done for us today.
Thanks, Craig. It was a pleasure to share some of my passions with you.
And by the way, all that paperwork in the background over your right shoulder there, that's a lot of work ahead of you. We'd better let you get back to it.
It's all to be filed. It's not to be done. It's X stuff.
Have you ever heard of electronic documents?
I have, but the courts have not.
Ah, typical. Thanks again, Tony. I really appreciate it.
Thanks, Craig.
What a fantastic presentation from Tony. His knowledge on the property industry and the legalities and how to keep you moving forward and creating wealth are limitless, I'm sure. His contact details are below. He would always appreciate your call and your contact. And you'll also find another link below which will take you through to a special offer for all of Tony's clients and the Creating Wealth Through Property audience.